The helicopter blades cut through the thick Afghan air as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos checked her medical kit one final time. At 28, she had already served 3 deployments as a Navy combat medic, earning respect from every SEAL team she had worked with. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, counting bandages and morphine doses while the transport bird carried them toward what intelligence called a routine extraction mission. Nothing in Afghanistan was ever routine. Maria had grown up in a small Texas border town where her grandmother taught her that healing hands were a gift from God. Her abuela would say, "Mija, some people are born to fix what is broken." Maria believed this with every fiber of her being. She had joined the Navy to serve, to heal, to save lives. The idea of taking one had never crossed her mind. The SEAL team she was embedded with, Team 7, had welcomed her like family. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, the team leader, was a gruff veteran from Montana who treated his medics like precious cargo. "Santos keeps us breathing," he would tell new guys. "You protect her, she protects all of us." Petty Officer First Class Tommy Rodriguez, the team's communications specialist, had become her closest friend. He was barely 22, with a baby face that made him look even younger, but his skills with radios and electronics were legendary. "Hey, Doc," he would joke, "when I retire, I'm gonna marry a nice nurse. Think you could put in a good word?" Chief Petty Officer Mike Chen was the team's explosive expert, quiet and methodical. He spoke in measured sentences and moved like a ghost. The other SEALs called him Professor because he had studied engineering before enlisting. He treated Maria with the same careful respect he showed his demolitions equipment. Petty Officer Second Class David "Bull" Johnson was the heavy weapons specialist, a mountain of a man from Alabama who could carry a machine gun like it was a toy. Despite his intimidating size, he was gentle with Maria, always making sure she had enough water and checking if she needed help with her gear. The youngest member was Petty Officer Third Class Alex Parker, a sniper fresh from training who still tried too hard to impress everyone. He was brilliant with a rifle but green in combat. Maria had patched him up after a training accident 6 months ago, and since then he looked up to her like a big sister. As the helicopter approached the landing zone, Lieutenant Commander Morrison gathered the team. "Intel says we have 2 hostages in a compound about 3 clicks from the LZ. Local warlords holding an American journalist and a French aid worker. In and out, clean and simple." Maria nodded, checking her weapon one last time. She carried a standard M4 carbine, but it was mainly for protection. Her job was to keep everyone alive, not to take lives. She had fired her weapon in combat before, but always as a last resort, always to protect a wounded teammate while evacuating them to safety. The helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust. Team 7 moved out in perfect formation, with Maria positioned in the middle where she would be safest. The Afghan landscape stretched endlessly around them, all brown earth and jagged rocks under a merciless sun. They had been walking for 20 minutes when Tommy Rodriguez held up his fist, the signal to stop. Through his radio earpiece, he was receiving chatter from base. His face went pale as he listened. "LT," he whispered to Morrison, "we got a problem, big problem." Morrison moved closer. "What is it?" "Intel was wrong. That compound is not holding 2 hostages. It is the forward operating base for about 60 Taliban fighters. They have been planning an attack on our main base for weeks. We just walked into the middle of their staging area." The team exchanged looks. There were 6 people against 60, miles from backup in enemy territory. Standard procedure would be to call for extraction and get out immediately. But Tommy was not finished. "There is more, sir. The 2 hostages are there, but so are about 20 civilian prisoners. Women and children from nearby villages. If we leave now and call in an airstrike, all those innocent people die." Maria felt her stomach drop. 20 innocent lives hung in the balance. Children who had done nothing wrong except live in a war zone. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Around them, the team waited. These men had trained together, fought together, bled together. They trusted their leader completely. "How long until backup can reach us?" Morrison asked. Tommy checked his radio. 4 hours minimum, maybe 6 depending on weather. "The Taliban will move those prisoners before then," Chen said quietly. "If they discover we are here, they will disappear into the mountains. We will never find them again." Morrison looked at each team member. When his eyes met Maria's, she saw something that made her heart race. He was not looking at her like she was cargo to be protected anymore. He was looking at her like she was a teammate, a warrior, someone whose opinion mattered in this impossible situation. "Santos," he said, "you have been in combat longer than Parker. You know what we are facing. What do you think?" The question surprised everyone, including Maria. SEALs rarely asked medics for tactical advice. But Morrison was not asking about tactics. He was asking about something deeper, about right and wrong, about what they could live with. Maria thought about her grandmother's words, about fixing what was broken, about her oath as a medic to first do no harm. But she also thought about 20 innocent people who would die if they did nothing. "We cannot leave them," she said quietly. "We became SEALs to protect people who cannot protect themselves. If we walk away from this, we are not the people we swore to be." Morrison nodded slowly. "Chen, what do you think about our chances?" The demolitions expert was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, sir, if we go in shooting, we all die. 60 fighters in fortified positions. We do not have enough ammunition to fight our way out. But if we are smart, if we use surprise and confusion." "What are you thinking?" Chen pointed toward the compound, barely visible in the distance. "I have enough explosives to take out their ammunition depot. If I can get close enough to plant charges, the blast will create chaos. In the confusion, we might be able to get the prisoners out." "Might," Morrison repeated. "Yes, sir, might. I would not bet money on it, but it is possible." Bull Johnson shifted his heavy weapon. "I can provide covering fire during the extraction, keep their heads down long enough for everyone to reach the rally point." "Parker," Morrison looked at the young sniper, "can you get eyes on the compound? Count fighters, locate the prisoners." Parker nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. There is high ground about 800 meters out, perfect overwatch position." Morrison turned to Tommy. "Can you jam their communications during the assault?" "For about 10 minutes, maybe 15 if I am lucky. After that, they will find workarounds." Morrison was quiet again. Maria could see him calculating odds, weighing risks. Every SEAL leader was trained to make these impossible decisions. Send 6 people against 60 to save 20 innocents. The math did not work on paper, but sometimes war was not about math. "We have one advantage they do not know about," Morrison said finally. "What is that, sir?" Parker asked. Morrison looked directly at Maria. "They have never faced anyone like us before. They expect American soldiers to follow predictable patterns. They expect medics to stay back and treat wounded. They expect snipers to set up in obvious positions. They expect demolitions experts to use standard tactics." Maria understood what he was saying. Their only chance was to do the unexpected. "What is the plan, sir?" she asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "We are going to give them the biggest surprise of their lives, but I need to know that everyone is committed. This is not a normal mission. If we do this, some of us might not make it home." Each team member nodded in turn. When Morrison looked at Maria, she met his eyes steadily. "I did not come this far to abandon innocent people," she said. "Let's bring them home." As the sun began to set over the Afghan mountains, Team 7 began planning an assault that would test everything they had learned about war, about courage, and about the price of doing what was right. Maria Santos had no idea that in the next few hours, she would discover parts of herself she never knew existed. The mission that was supposed to be routine had become anything but, and the medic who had sworn to heal was about to face choices that would change her forever. In the gathering darkness, 60 Taliban fighters prepared for an attack they thought would never come. They had no idea that 6 Americans were moving toward them through the night, carrying skills, determination, and a willingness to sacrifice everything for people they had never met. The battle for the compound was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The compound sprawled across a rocky plateau like a medieval fortress, surrounded by mud brick walls and guard towers. Through his spotting scope, Alex Parker counted muzzle flashes and movement patterns, while the rest of Team 7 gathered around Lieutenant Commander Morrison for the final briefing. "Parker, what do you see?" Morrison whispered into his radio. 63 fighters confirmed. Heavy weapons positions on the north and south walls. Main building has the prisoners. I can see them through a window on the 2nd floor. 22 civilians, looks like mostly women and children. 2 adult males who match the description of our primary targets. Maria felt her heart rate spike. 22 innocent lives. The number had grown since their last intelligence update. Guard rotations, Morrison asked. Every 30 minutes. Next rotation in 12 minutes. Best entry point is the east wall where they have a blind spot between guard towers. Chief Chen was already sketching the compound layout in the dirt. Ammunition depot is here, he pointed to a smaller building. I can reach it through this drainage ditch, plant charges, and be back to the rally point in 20 minutes. Bull, can you provide overwatch from the ridge? The big machine gunner nodded. I will have clear fields of fire on both guard towers and the main courtyard. Soon as Chen's fireworks start, I will keep their heads down. Morrison looked at Tommy Rodriguez. Communications. I will jam everything on a 15-minute cycle starting when Chen reaches the depot. After that, they will start adapting, but it should be enough. The plan was coming together, but Maria noticed that Morrison had not assigned her a specific role yet. She was about to ask when Chen spoke up. LT, we have a problem. The prisoner building has 2 entrances, but they are both heavily guarded. Even with the distraction from the ammunition depot explosion, whoever goes in to extract the civilians will be walking into a kill zone. Morrison studied the layout Chen had drawn. The tactical situation was nearly impossible. To reach the prisoners, someone would have to cross 40 meters of open courtyard under direct fire from multiple positions. What if we create a second distraction? Parker suggested. I could take out the guards at the front entrance right when the depot explodes. Negative, Morrison shook his head. Your position is too far from the building. By the time you shift targets, they will have reinforcements at both entrances. Maria stared at the crude map, her mind racing. She had spent enough time around SEALs to understand military tactics, even if she was not formally trained in them. The problem was clear. They needed someone to neutralize the guards at close range while Chen's explosion provided cover. What if someone was already inside the compound when the attack began? She asked quietly. The team looked at her. Morrison frowned. Inside how? I go in first, before the assault. Find a position where I can cover the prisoner building during the extraction. Santos, that is suicide. You would be alone in there with 60 hostiles. Not if I am invisible. Maria pointed to the drainage ditch Chen planned to use. I follow the same route Chen will take, but I go first. Find a position inside the compound where I can wait until the fireworks start. Chen was shaking his head. Doc, no offense, but you are not trained for infiltration. One mistake and you are dead and we lose our medic. He is right, Morrison said. We cannot risk you like that. Maria felt frustration building. She understood their concern, but she also understood something they were missing. You are thinking about this wrong. You are seeing me as cargo that needs protection. But I am not cargo anymore. I am a team member, and this team needs someone inside that compound. Maria, Tommy said gently, using her first name instead of her rank. We know you are brave. You do not have to prove anything. This is not about proving anything, she snapped, louder than she intended. The team fell silent. Maria took a breath and continued more quietly. This is about 22 innocent people who are going to die if we do not get them out. You need someone inside that compound, and I am the only one who can get there without being detected. Why you? Morrison asked. Why not Chen or Parker? Because I am not threatening. If someone spots me, I am just a lost medic looking for wounded to treat. Chen is obviously a demolitions expert. His gear gives him away. Parker moves like a sniper. Anyone with combat experience would recognize it immediately. But me, I move like what I am, a medic, someone who belongs on a battlefield but is not there to fight. The logic was sound, and Morrison knew it. But sending his medic alone into an enemy compound violated every instinct he had developed as a leader. Even if you get inside, Bull said, you would need to take out multiple guards simultaneously. That requires precision shooting under extreme stress. You are good with that M4, Doc, but this is sniper work. Maria looked at each team member. These men had become her family over the past year. They trusted her to keep them alive when they were wounded. Now she needed them to trust her to do more. Parker, she said, how far is your overwatch position from the prisoner building? About 800 meters. What is the maximum effective range of an M4 carbine? Parker looked confused. About 500 meters for accurate fire. Why? And how close would someone need to be to guarantee precise shots on multiple targets? Parker's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. 50 meters, maybe less in low light conditions. Morrison was catching on too. Santos, you are talking about close quarters combat. That is not medical training. No, Maria agreed. But it is something I can learn. Parker, how long do we have before the assault begins? 4 hours until optimal darkness. Maria turned to Morrison. Give me 4 hours with Parker. Let him teach me what I need to know. If I cannot demonstrate adequate proficiency, I stay back with the standard plan. The team exchanged looks. They all knew the standard plan had maybe a 30% chance of success. Maria's proposal was riskier for her personally, but it gave the overall mission a much better chance. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. As team leader, his job was to bring everyone home alive, but his greater duty was to complete the mission, to save those innocent lives. Parker, he said finally, can you teach a medic to shoot like a sniper in 4 hours? The young marksman looked at Maria, studying her face. He had seen her under fire before. He had watched her stay calm while treating wounded men with bullets flying overhead. She had steady hands and ice-cold nerves. The fundamentals, yes. Breathing control, trigger squeeze, target acquisition. Doc already knows weapons safety and basic marksmanship. I can teach her precision shooting at close range. Chen, Morrison continued, can you modify your approach to include Overwatch for Santos during her infiltration? The demolitions expert studied his sketch again. If she follows my route and waits for my signal before moving to her final position, yes. I can provide early warning if her position is compromised. Morrison looked at Bull and Tommy. Both men nodded their agreement. All right, Santos, you have 4 hours to prove you can do this. But understand, if I have any doubt about your readiness, you stay back. I will not send an unprepared teammate into that compound. Maria felt a surge of gratitude and terror in equal measure. Understood, sir. As the team began detailed mission planning, Parker pulled Maria aside to a rocky outcropping about 200 meters away. He set up a makeshift shooting position and began breaking down the fundamentals of precision marksmanship. The most important thing is breathing, he explained. Your heart rate will be through the roof in there. Combat breathing in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. Do it until your pulse drops. Maria practiced the breathing technique while Parker adjusted her shooting position. Your natural shooting stance is too defensive. You are thinking like someone who shoots to protect, not to eliminate threats. For this mission, you need to think differently. Over the next 2 hours, Parker taught Maria advanced shooting techniques she had never learned in medical training. Rapid target acquisition, multiple threat engagement, shooting from unusual positions and angles. The compound will be chaos once Chen's charges detonate, Parker explained. Guards will be disoriented, maybe temporarily deafened. That is your window. 3, maybe 4 seconds to engage multiple targets before they react. Maria's military training helped her absorb the lessons quickly. Her steady hands and calm demeanor under pressure translated well to precision shooting. By the 3rd hour, she was consistently hitting targets at ranges that would be realistic inside the compound. There is something else, Parker said as they took a break. Shooting to kill is different from shooting to warn or wound. Psychologically, I mean, have you thought about that? Maria had been thinking about little else. Her entire career had been devoted to preserving life. Everything she believed about herself was built around healing rather than harming. I keep thinking about those children, she said quietly. If I hesitate because I am worried about my conscience, they die. If I fail because I cannot pull the trigger when it matters, their blood is on my hands anyway. Parker nodded. That is the right mindset. When the time comes, you are not taking lives, you are saving them. As the sun set behind the mountains, Morrison gathered the team for final preparations. Maria's 4-hour crash course in combat marksmanship was complete. Now came the test. Morrison had set up a realistic simulation using rocks and equipment to represent the compound layout. Santos, show me what you would do from the moment you reach the prisoner building until extraction is complete. Maria moved through the mock scenario, demonstrating her shooting positions, target priorities, and communication signals. Her movements were deliberate and confident. Parker had been an excellent teacher, and Maria had been a focused student. Acceptable, Morrison said when she finished. It was high praise from the taciturn team leader. Chen looked up from his explosives preparation. Charges are ready. 2-minute delay from detonation signal to explosion. That gives Santos time to reach her position and prepare. Bull had test-fired his machine gun and confirmed his sight adjustments. Tommy had verified that his jamming equipment would work at the required range. Everything was ready. In 2 hours, they would begin the most dangerous mission any of them had ever attempted. Maria checked her medical kit one final time, but her focus had shifted. Tonight, she would not be thinking like a medic. Tonight, she would be thinking like a warrior. The transformation had already begun, and there was no turning back. The compound waited in the darkness ahead, filled with enemies who had no idea that death was coming for them, carried in the steady hands of a Navy medic who had just learned how to kill. Maria Santos lay flat against the cold stone of the drainage ditch, her heart hammering so hard she was sure the guards above could hear it. The compound was alive with activity even at 2 in the morning. Voices carried across the courtyard in Pashto and Arabic as fighters prepared weapons and checked positions. They knew American forces were in the area, but they had no idea death was already inside their walls. The infiltration had taken 90 minutes of careful movement through the drainage system Chen had mapped earlier. Maria's medical training had actually helped. She knew how to move quietly through confined spaces from years of navigating crowded field hospitals without disturbing wounded soldiers. Now she crouched 15 meters from the prisoner building, hidden behind a pile of supply crates. Through a gap between the wooden boxes, she could see 2 guards at the main entrance and movement at a side door. Parker's training echoed in her mind. Identify all threats before engaging any of them. Her radio crackled softly with Chen's voice. Viper 1 in position, 2 minutes to fireworks. Morrison's response was equally quiet. All stations, confirm ready. Viper 2 ready. That was Bull from his overwatch position. Viper 3 ready. Tommy with his communication jamming equipment. Viper 4 ready. Parker from his sniper position. All eyes turned to Maria. This was her last chance to abort. Once she confirmed ready, the mission would proceed, and she would have to do things she had never imagined when she first put on a Navy uniform. She thought about her grandmother's words about fixing what was broken. Sometimes, she realized, you had to break the thing that was doing the damage. Viper 5 ready, she whispered. Chen's voice came back, 30 seconds. Maria shifted to her shooting position. 2 guards at the main entrance, both armed with AK-47s. A third guard had emerged from the side door and was smoking a cigarette. From her angle, she could engage all 3 if her timing was perfect. Combat breathing, 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. Her heart rate dropped, her hands steadied. 10 seconds, Chen reported. Maria's finger found the trigger. The world narrowed to the 3 targets and the space between them. Parker had drilled this scenario dozens of times. First shot center mass on the closest threat, transition immediately to the second, then the third. Total time, less than 3 seconds. Execute, Chen said. The explosion lit up the night sky like a miniature sun. The ammunition depot erupted in a chain reaction of secondary explosions that sent shockwaves across the entire compound. The guard towers shook. Windows shattered. Men shouted in confusion and alarm. In that moment of chaos, Maria Santos ceased being a medic and became something else entirely. Her first shot took the guard at the main entrance in the chest. He dropped without making a sound. The second guard turned toward the explosion, giving her a perfect profile shot. Her bullet found its mark before he even knew he was in danger. The third guard, still holding his cigarette, looked around in confusion. Maria's third shot arrived before his brain could process what was happening to his companions. 3 men dead in 2.8 seconds. Maria felt a strange disconnect from reality. She had just taken 3 lives with the same steady hands she used to save them. There should have been horror, guilt, revulsion. Instead, there was only clarity. She keyed her radio. Viper 5 entrance secured, moving to extraction point. The prisoner building's main door was heavy wood reinforced with metal plates. Maria tested it carefully, locked from the inside. She moved to the side door where the smoking guard had emerged. It stood slightly open. Through the gap, she could hear crying, children's voices speaking Dari and Pashto. The sound filled her with rage that surprised her with its intensity. These bastards had terrorized innocent children. Her next targets would not get clean deaths. Maria eased through the doorway into a narrow hallway. Stairs led up to the second floor where Parker had spotted the prisoners. Two voices came from a room at the end of the hall, guards talking in low, urgent tones about the explosion. She moved like Chen had taught her, testing each step before committing her full weight. The old building's floorboards were solid beneath her feet. No creaks, no groans. At the end of the hallway, she could see into the guard room. Two men hunched over a radio, trying to make contact with their commanders. They had no idea their communications were being jammed by Tommy Rodriguez. These guards were older than the ones outside. Veterans. They would be harder to surprise and more dangerous if they got their weapons up. Maria steadied herself against the doorframe and acquired her targets. The first guard had his back to her. The second was turned partially away, focused on the radio. Both had rifles within reach but not ready. Two more shots, two more Taliban fighters who would never terrorize children again. The radio squawked with static and fragments of panicked voices. Maria smashed it with the butt of her rifle and moved toward the stairs. On the second floor, she found them. 22 civilians crowded into a room that should have held 8 people. Women ranging from teenagers to grandmothers. Children from toddlers to adolescents. In the corner, bound and beaten, were the 2 original hostages, a bearded American journalist who looked to be in his 40s and a young French woman who appeared to be a medical aid worker. All of them stared at Maria with a mixture of hope and terror. Her uniform marked her as American military, but she was covered in dirt and blood, and her eyes held a hardness that made some of the children shrink back. "English," she called softly. "Anyone speak English?" An elderly woman stepped forward. "I speak little English, you, American." "Yes, we're here to get you out, all of you." Maria moved to the French woman and began cutting her restraints with her combat knife. "Can you walk?" "Yes," the woman gasped in accented English. "But the children, some are injured. There's a little boy with a broken arm." Maria's medic training kicked in automatically. She moved through the group, quickly assessing injuries. The broken arm would need a sling. Several children showed signs of dehydration, nothing that would prevent them from moving, but they would need support. The American journalist was in worse shape. Facial injuries, possible concussion, definitely dehydrated, but conscious and mobile. "Listen to me," Maria told the group, speaking slowly and clearly. "We have very little time. There are bad men downstairs who will try to stop us. I need everyone to stay close together and do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" The elderly woman translated quickly. Heads nodded around the room. Maria's radio crackled. "Viper 5 status report. Prisoners secured. 24 total including primary targets. Beginning movement to extract point. Copy, be advised. Hostiles are organizing response. Bull is engaging targets in the courtyard, but you'll have company soon." Through the window, Maria could see muzzle flashes and hear the distinctive sound of Bull's machine gun keeping Taliban fighters pinned down. The plan was working, but barely. "Moving now," Maria reported. She led the group to the staircase. The elderly woman helped translate her instructions to keep everyone quiet and stay low. The journalist and the aid worker, despite their injuries, helped support the smaller children. At the bottom of the stairs, Maria held up her hand for everyone to stop. Voices in the courtyard were getting closer. Taliban fighters were regrouping and beginning a systematic search for whoever had killed the guards. Her radio whispered with Parker's voice. "Viper 5, you have 4 hostiles approaching your building from the north side. Recommend alternate exit." "Roger, moving to south side." But the south side led directly into the courtyard, where Bull's machine gun fire was concentrated. They would be crossing through the middle of an active firefight. Maria made a decision that would have been unthinkable 6 hours earlier. She was not going to lead these people around the fighting. She was going to fight her way through it. "Stay here," she told the elderly woman. "I'm going to clear the path. When I signal, move everyone as fast as possible to that wall." She pointed to the compound's south wall where Chen had cut an exit hole earlier. The woman's eyes widened as she understood what Maria intended to do. Maria stepped into the courtyard and saw exactly what Parker had warned her about. 4 Taliban fighters were advancing toward the building in tactical formation. Professional soldiers, not the undisciplined militia they had expected. But they were expecting to fight other soldiers. They were not expecting a blood-covered Navy medic who had just discovered she had a talent for killing. Maria's fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh shots dropped all four men before they knew she was there. Her movement between targets was fluid, instinctive. Parker's crash course had awakened something in her that felt almost supernatural. She keyed her radio, path clear, execute extraction. The group of civilians moved across the courtyard like a school of fish, staying tight together, the stronger ones supporting the weaker ones. Maria covered their movement, her rifle sweeping for additional threats. They were 20 meters from the exit when everything went wrong. A hidden machine gun position on the east wall opened fire, sending bullets crashing into the dirt around the fleeing civilians. Maria saw a young mother fall, clutching her leg. An elderly man stumbled and went down hard. Without thinking, Maria stepped into the open and returned fire. Her bullets sparked off the machine gun's position but could not penetrate its cover. The gunner adjusted his aim toward her. In that moment, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos made a choice that would define the rest of her life. Instead of seeking cover, instead of calling for backup, she advanced directly toward the machine gun position. The Taliban fighter behind the weapon had never seen anything like it. An American soldier walking straight into his field of fire, shooting with impossible accuracy while completely exposed. Maria's eighth shot found its mark. The machine gun fell silent. But her radio was screaming with urgent voices. More fighters were converging on their position. The extraction window was closing fast. "Viper 5, you need to move now." Morrison's voice carried genuine fear. Maria looked back at the civilians. The wounded mother was being supported by two other women. The elderly man was back on his feet. They were all looking at her with expressions she would never forget. She was no longer their rescuer. She was their protector, their guardian angel with blood on her hands and ice in her veins. "This way," she called, leading them toward the hole Chen had blown in the compound wall. "We're going home." Behind them, the compound burned. Ahead of them lay freedom. And somewhere in between, Maria Santos had become someone she never expected to be. The transformation was not complete. The hardest part was still coming. The hole in the compound wall opened onto a steep hillside covered with loose rocks and thorny scrub. Maria pushed through first, scanning for threats while the civilians filed out behind her. The elderly woman who spoke English helped organize the group, whispering urgent instructions in Dari and Pashto. "Rally point is 800 meters northeast," Maria told them, pointing toward a cluster of large boulders barely visible in the darkness. "We stay together, we stay quiet, and we move fast." Behind them, the compound was chaos. Secondary explosions continued to rock Chen's ammunition depot. Bull's machine gun chattered from his overwatch position, keeping Taliban fighters pinned down in the courtyard. But Maria knew their luck would not last much longer. Soon, the enemy would organize pursuit. The group began climbing the hillside. The French aid worker, despite her injuries, helped carry a toddler whose mother was wounded. The American journalist, still groggy from his beatings, supported an elderly man who was struggling with the rough terrain. They had covered maybe 200 meters when Maria's radio crackled with Chen's voice. "Viper 5, you've got problems. Vehicle convoy approaching from the south. 4 trucks, estimate 40 additional hostiles. ETA to your position 3 minutes." Maria felt ice form in her stomach. 40 fresh fighters would overwhelm Team 7's defensive positions and cut off the civilians' escape route. The rally point they were heading toward would become a killing zone. "Can you delay them?" she asked. "Negative. I'm out of explosives and too far from their approach route." Morrison's voice cut in. "All stations, prepare for immediate extraction to secondary rally point. Bull, can you shift fire to cover the civilian group?" "Negative, LT. If I leave this position, the hostiles in the compound will overrun Chen's location." Maria stopped climbing and looked back at the group of civilians struggling up the hillside behind her. 24 people who had survived weeks of captivity, who trusted her to get them to safety. If those trucks reached the primary rally point before the civilians did, everyone would die. Parker's voice came through her earpiece. "Viper 5, I can see the convoy. Leading truck has a mounted machine gun. They're moving fast." The tactical situation was impossible. Team 7 was spread too thin to engage a convoy while protecting the civilian extraction. Someone needed to delay those trucks, and there was only one person in position to do it. Viper 1, Maria said into her radio. I can reach the convoy route before they pass the civilians' position. Negative, Viper 5. You're not equipped for vehicle interdiction. I don't need to destroy them. I just need to slow them down for 5 minutes, long enough for the civilians to reach cover. Morrison's voice carried a note of desperation. Santos, 4 trucks full of fighters is a suicide mission. Even if you slow the convoy, you'll be cut off with no backup. Maria looked at the group climbing behind her. A teenage girl helping her grandmother navigate the rocks. A young mother clutching her baby while blood seeped through a bandage on her leg. Children who should have been sleeping safely in their beds instead of fleeing through a war zone. LT, she said quietly. These people survived weeks of hell waiting for us to find them. I'm not going to let them die 50 meters from freedom. Before Morrison could respond, Maria was moving. Not toward the rally point with the civilians, but diagonally across the hillside toward the road where the convoy would pass. Behind her, the elderly woman called out in alarm. The French aid worker tried to follow, but Maria waved her back. Keep them moving, Maria shouted. Don't stop for anything. The terrain worked in her favor. Generations of erosion had carved deep gullies and ravines across the hillside, providing concealment and natural firing positions. Maria reached a rocky outcropping that overlooked the dirt road just as headlights appeared in the distance. 4 trucks, just as Chen had reported. The lead vehicle mounted a heavy machine gun. The others were packed with fighters carrying assault rifles and RPGs. Enough firepower to wipe out Team 7 and every civilian they were trying to protect. Maria settled into a shooting position behind the rocks. Her M4 carbine held 30 rounds. She carried 4 additional magazines, 150 rounds total against 40 enemy fighters. The math was impossible, but mathematics had never been her strong suit anyway. Her radio whispered with Parker's voice. Viper 5, I can provide supporting fire from your 6 o'clock, but my effective range is limited at this angle. Negative, Viper 4, stay on overwatch for the civilian group. I've got this. Parker's voice carried disbelief. Doc, you can't engage a convoy by yourself. It's not possible. Watch me. The lead truck was 400 meters away and closing fast. In 30 seconds, it would reach the point where the convoy could turn up the hillside and intercept the fleeing civilians. Maria had 30 seconds to do the impossible. She keyed her radio one final time. All stations, Viper 5 is engaging the convoy. Continue extraction protocol. Do not compromise mission for my position. Morrison's voice was sharp. Santos, that's an order. Do not engage superior forces alone. Maria turned off her radio. The lead truck hit the kill zone she had mentally marked, and Maria Santos opened fire. Her first shots targeted the gunner behind the mounted weapon. 3 rounds center mass dropped him before he could traverse his weapon toward her position. The truck swerved as the driver reacted to the sudden attack. Maria's next target was the driver of the second vehicle. She put 2 rounds through the windshield and watched the truck veer off the road and crash into a boulder. By now, the convoy had stopped and fighters were pouring out of the vehicles, looking for cover and trying to identify her firing position. But Maria was already moving. She bounded from her first position to a new location 30 meters away, using the terrain to mask her movement. Before the Taliban fighters could adjust, she was engaging them from a completely different angle. 2 more fighters dropped before they realized they were not being attacked by a team of snipers, but by a single shooter who moved like a ghost. The convoy commander was shouting orders, trying to organize his scattered fighters. Maria put a bullet through his chest from 200 meters away, and the tactical coordination of the attack began to fall apart. But her ammunition was running low, and the remaining fighters were beginning to locate her position. Muzzle flashes lit up the hillside as dozens of weapons fired in her direction. Maria moved again, bounding between rock formations while bullets sparked off the stones around her. She had lost count of how many enemy fighters she had killed, but the convoy was no longer advancing toward the civilian group. Her radio crackled as someone turned it back on remotely. Morrison's voice was urgent. All stations, civilian group has reached secondary rally point. Extraction helicopter inbound, ETA 4 minutes. Relief flooded through Maria's chest. The civilians were safe. Her impossible mission was a success. But she was trapped. Taliban fighters had surrounded her position and were closing in from 3 directions. Her ammunition was nearly exhausted. The extraction helicopter would arrive soon, but not soon enough. Parker's voice cut through the radio chatter. "Viper 5, I'm moving to support your position." "Negative," Maria replied, shifting to avoid a burst of automatic weapons fire. "Stay with the civilians." "The civilians are secure. I'm coming to get you." "Parker, that's an order. Do not abandon your overwatch position." The young sniper's response surprised everyone. "With all due respect, Doc, you're not my commanding officer, and you taught me something tonight about what we do for family." Through the chaos of gunfire and explosions, Maria heard a new sound. The distinctive crack of Parker's sniper rifle engaging targets at long range. Taliban fighters who had been advancing on her position suddenly found themselves under precision fire from an unexpected direction. Chen's voice joined the radio chatter. "Viper 5, I'm moving to support extraction. Bull is shifting position to provide covering fire for your exfiltration route." Morrison's command voice cut through everything. "All stations converge on Viper 5's position. We leave no one behind." What followed was 4 minutes of the most intense combat any of them had ever experienced. Team 7 fought as a unit to extract their medic, who had become something more than any of them had expected. Parker's sniper fire kept the Taliban fighters at a distance, while Chen used his remaining small explosives to clear an escape route. Bull's machine gun created a corridor of suppressing fire that allowed Maria to bound from her surrounded position back toward the rally point. The extraction helicopter arrived to find all 6 members of Team 7 and 24 rescued civilians waiting at the landing zone. As the aircraft lifted off into the pre-dawn darkness, Maria looked back at the burning compound and the scattered convoy below. In one night, she had killed more enemy fighters than most soldiers did in an entire deployment. She had saved 24 innocent lives and accomplished a mission that should have been impossible. But the cost was becoming clear as the adrenaline faded. Maria Santos, the medic who had joined the Navy to heal and help, had discovered she possessed a deadly talent that changed everything she thought she knew about herself. As the helicopter carried them towards safety, Lieutenant Commander Morrison moved to sit beside her. In the red light of the cabin, his expression was unreadable. "Santos," he said quietly, just loud enough to be heard over the rotor noise, "that was some of the finest combat performance I've ever witnessed, but I need to ask you something important." Maria met his eyes. "What, sir?" "Can you live with what you did tonight? Because what I saw back there, that wasn't beginner's luck. That was natural talent. The kind of talent that makes people ask questions about where you should be assigned next." Maria thought about the children's faces in that crowded room, about the teenage girl helping her grandmother climb the hillside, about the young mother clutching her baby while bleeding from a gunshot wound. "I can live with it," she said. "The question is whether I can live without it." Morrison nodded slowly. "That's what I was afraid you'd say." As the helicopter flew toward base, carrying heroes and refugees toward safety, Maria Santos stared out at the Afghan landscape and wondered what would happen to a medic who had discovered she was born to be a warrior. The transformation was almost complete. Only one test remained. 3 weeks after the compound rescue, Maria Santos sat in a sterile conference room at Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters in Coronado, California. Across from her sat Captain Rebecca Walsh, a stern woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen decades of military service. Between them lay a thick folder marked "Classified" and a decision that would determine the rest of Maria's career. "Staff Sergeant Santos," Captain Walsh began, "your actions during Operation Nightingale have created what we might call an unusual situation. In one night, you transitioned from combat medic to what our after-action reports describe as an elite marksman with natural tactical instincts that exceed many of our specially trained operators." Maria sat at attention, her dress uniform crisp and decorated with ribbons she had earned over 4 deployments. Among them was a new addition, the Silver Star for Gallantry in Action, awarded for her performance during the compound assault. "The question before us today," Captain Walsh continued, "is what to do with a medic who has demonstrated exceptional combat capabilities. Your commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Morrison, has submitted a recommendation that I find quite remarkable. The captain opened the folder and read from Morrison's report. Quote, Staff Sergeant Santos displayed tactical awareness, marksmanship ability, and combat leadership that rivals our most experienced special operations personnel. Her transition from medical support to direct action operator was seamless and instinctive. I recommend immediate consideration for advanced sniper training and possible reassignment to special operations role. Unquote. Maria felt her heart rate spike. In the 3 weeks since the rescue, she had tried to return to her normal duties as a medic. But something fundamental had changed. When she looked at her medical equipment now, she thought about the precision required for different types of shots. When she treated wounded soldiers, she found herself analyzing defensive positions and fields of fire. The medic who had wanted only to heal was gone. In her place sat someone who understood that sometimes the best way to save lives was to take them. The problem, Captain Walsh said, is that you are not just any sailor. You are a highly decorated combat medic with 4 years of exemplary service. Medical personnel like you are critically needed, especially with your experience level. We cannot simply reassign you based on one exceptional night. Maria found her voice. Ma'am, with respect, it was not just one night. It was a revelation about who I really am. Captain Walsh studied her carefully. Explain that statement, Staff Sergeant. For 4 years, I believed my purpose was to save lives through medical treatment. That mission drove everything I did, every decision I made. But during that compound assault, I realized there was another way to save lives, a more direct way. By taking lives instead of saving them. By eliminating threats to innocent people. Ma'am, I killed 11 enemy fighters that night. 11 people who would have murdered 24 civilians if I had not stopped them. The mathematics are simple. 11 deaths prevented 24 deaths plus however many more those fighters would have killed in future operations. Captain Walsh leaned back in her chair. You sound like you have given this considerable thought. Yes, ma'am, I have thought about little else for 3 weeks. The captain opened another section of the folder. Your psychological evaluation following the mission shows no signs of combat stress or moral injury related to your actions. The psychologist noted that you display what he called remarkable emotional stability for someone who experienced such a dramatic role transition. How do you explain that? Maria had been asked this question by 3 different military psychiatrists. Her answer had evolved with each session. Ma'am, I think I was always meant for this role. The medical training just gave me the foundation: steady hands, calm under pressure, ability to make life-or-death decisions quickly. When the situation demanded it, those skills transferred naturally to combat operations. And you feel no remorse for taking human lives? This was the question that had haunted Maria for weeks. She had expected guilt, nightmares, moral conflict. Instead, she felt something closer to satisfaction. The knowledge that her actions had saved innocent people gave her a sense of purpose she had never experienced as a medic. I feel no remorse for protecting innocent people, ma'am. The Taliban fighters I killed were terrorists who had tortured civilians and planned to murder more. Stopping them was not a moral compromise. It was a moral imperative. Captain Walsh made notes in the margin of the report. Lieutenant Commander Morrison speaks very highly of your performance under fire, but he also mentions concerns about your future assignment. He believes you have outgrown the medical role, but questions whether traditional special operations training would be appropriate given your unique background. What does he recommend? Something unprecedented. He wants you to undergo evaluation for a pilot program that would create hybrid medic sniper specialists. Personnel who could provide medical support when needed but transition to precision marksman roles during direct action missions. Maria felt excitement building in her chest, a role that combined her medical expertise with her newly discovered combat abilities. It sounded perfect. But Captain Walsh was not finished. The program would require you to undergo an additional 18 months of specialized training. Advanced marksmanship, tactical operations, combat medicine, psychological conditioning. It would be harder than anything you have experienced, and there is no guarantee you would succeed. I want to try, ma'am. Even knowing that failure would likely result in reassignment outside special operations entirely. You would lose your current position with Team 7. Maria thought about Morrison, Chen, Parker, Bull, and Tommy. They had become her family over the past year. The idea of leaving them was painful, but the idea of returning to a purely medical role after what she had discovered about herself was worse. Ma'am, Team 7 deserves a medic who is completely focused on the medical mission. I am not that person anymore. My effectiveness in a traditional medical role has been compromised by my knowledge that I can contribute more directly to mission success. Captain Walsh studied Maria's service record one more time. Staff Sergeant, before I make this decision, I want to hear your answer to one final question. What happens to Maria Santos the healer if she becomes Maria Santos the warrior? The question struck deeper than anything the psychologists had asked. Maria thought about her grandmother's words about healing hands being a gift from God, about her oath as a medic to first do no harm, about the woman she had been before that night in Afghanistan. Ma'am, I think the healer and the warrior are the same person with different tools. My grandmother always said I was meant to fix what was broken. For 4 years, I fixed broken bodies. Now I know I can also fix broken situations by eliminating the people who create them. Captain Walsh closed the folder and stood up. Staff Sergeant Santos, you are hereby accepted into the Naval Special Warfare Hybrid Specialist Program, effective immediately. You will report to Naval Special Warfare Development Group next Monday for initial assessment and training pipeline assignment. Maria felt a surge of triumph mixed with nervousness. She was about to embark on training that would push her beyond every limit she thought she had. Thank you, ma'am. I will not disappoint you. I do not think you could if you tried. But Santos, understand something clearly. You are not just entering an elite training program. You are helping to create an entirely new type of special operations specialist. Your success or failure will determine whether this program continues. As Maria left the conference room, she thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. From a small Texas town to the mountains of Afghanistan. From a medic who had never fired her weapon in anger to a warrior who had killed 11 enemies in one night. 6 months later, Maria graduated at the top of her hybrid specialist class. Her instructors noted that they had never seen anyone adapt so quickly to advanced combat training while retaining expert-level medical skills. A year later, she returned to Afghanistan as part of a new unit designed to handle the most complex special operations missions. Her call sign was Angel, both for her ability to save lives and her deadly accuracy with a sniper rifle. 2 years later, when Team 7 was pinned down by enemy fire during a mission in Syria, it was Master Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos who provided the precision fire that allowed their extraction. As the team regrouped at the rally point, Lieutenant Commander Morrison looked at his former medic with something approaching awe. Santos, he said, remind me never to get on your bad side. Maria smiled as she broke down her sniper rifle with the same careful attention she had once given to medical equipment. Don't worry, LT, I only kill bad guys now. Parker, now a seasoned operator himself, shook his head in amazement. Doc, when I was teaching you to shoot that night in Afghanistan, did you know this would happen? Maria thought about the question seriously. No, she said finally, but I think I hoped it would, I just didn't know that hope was allowed. As the team prepared to move out, Bull Johnson voiced what they were all thinking. You know what the craziest part is? She's still exactly the same person she always was. She just found a better way to do her job. Tommy Rodriguez, monitoring radio chatter, looked up from his equipment. Speaking of which, Doc, we've got wounded civilians about 2 clicks north. Looks like you get to be a medic again. Maria shouldered her rifle and checked her medical kit with equal care. Good, she said. I was starting to miss the easy stuff. As Master Chief Santos led her team toward their next mission, she thought about a conversation she had had with her grandmother during her last leave. The old woman had looked at her granddaughter's new decorations and asked if she was still fixing what was broken. Yes, Abuela, Maria had answered. I'm just using different tools now. Her grandmother had smiled and touched the sniper qualification badge on Maria's uniform. Mija, some things can only be fixed by removing what makes them broken. You were always meant for this. Looking back years later, the SEALs who served with Maria Santos would remember many things about her. Her impossible accuracy under pressure, her ability to save lives and take them with equal skill, her transformation from healer to warrior without losing her essential humanity. But most of all, they remembered her fierceness. the absolute determination to protect innocent people that drove her to become something the military had never seen before. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, by then a captain, would eventually write in his memoir, "We won't ever forget her fierceness. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos switched from medic to sniper almost immediately when the mission demanded it, and in doing so, she redefined what it means to be a warrior. She proved that the best way to preserve life is sometimes to end it." The medic who became a legend had found her true calling, and the world was safer because she had.